All right, folks, this week we're going to be getting real with none other than Terry Bolton. Terry has pursued an entire career in professional bass fishing.
That's right.
We're actually standing right here on your home lake, Kentucky Lake in the background, my home state as well.
That's right.
And Terry, you know, you have a pretty exceptional resume when it comes to the bass fishing world. And, you know, I grew up hearing your name as a tournament fisherman and me competing locally here in Kentucky. And
Yep.
I'd hear your name and many of the guys that you fished with. And but when you look at the professional side of it, you know, you have career winnings that have exceeded $1 million+.
That's right.
You've spent your entire life chasing what some call a dream, and for you, it's a job. It's
Sometimes a nightmare.
sometimes a nightmare. But you know, tell me a little bit. How did you, you know, where'd your start in fishing fall from? You know.
Well,
what made you get into it?
It started right here. You know, my family owned this land. My dad and I would come up here. We'd go fishing on the weekend, bluegill fishing, and you know, I played sports as a kid. And as I got older, my dad subscribed to Bassmasters magazine, and I started reading about tournaments, and I just fell in love with catching fish from a young age. And as I got older, I started getting more, I guess, as you want to say, curious about bass and bass tournaments. And I met Mark Menendez my senior year in high school, was getting ready to graduate. Mark kind of took me under his wing and started taking me fishing, and we started fishing tournaments together, and he kind of really fed that fire that I had and to try to teach me and bring me into fishing tournaments. So that's kind of how I got my start.
And so you grew up right here in Kentucky. Actually,
That's right.
This place we're standing at right now belonged to your grandfather
That's
and
right.
family.
My grandfather bought this land, and right after the dam was formed in the early 50s.
So you have genuinely grew up as a youngster right here on the banks of Kentucky
That's
Lake.
right. That's right. I grew up right here fishing everything you can see here. I could draw you a map of everything out here without looking at one.
Well, you know, the last couple of days we've been down here filming a show, of course, for the Direction. And, you know, I listen to you reminisce about stories, you know, about fishing with your dad when you were little in this bay right here. You said
That's right.
literally your dad would confine you to going out in the boat and having to stay in this bay. And,
That's right.
You know, those childhood memories from here, your own, I mean, this is home for you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everything, you know, this piece of property right here had a large bearing on who I am and what I chose to do as a person. It's kind of strange that a decision made by my grandfather, who I never knew because he passed away when my dad was young, that decision, you know, influenced my life in such a big way, you know. So that's pretty neat. I mean, everything, you know, I've got so many memories of fishing right here, not only bass, crappie, bluegill, you know, but a lot of it, you know, that's what kind of drove me to become a professional bass fisherman. And when I started, I never dreamed, I didn't know if I'd make it 6 months, a year, you know, let alone do it for 26, going on 27 years, you know. So, you know, I've been very lucky, very fortunate, and it doesn't help I'm a little dumb too, so, you know.
Well, you know, probably one of my favorite statements over the last couple of days of being in the boat with you is, you know, you brought the real to
That's
the
right.
fishing side for me, because so many people see that stage, they see that platform, whether it's professional bass fishing, whether it's in sports, but it's the amount of work and time and commitment that goes into it.
That's
because
right.
You said, you know, I've spent $3 million to win $1.5 million, and that really hit home.
That's
because
right. A lot of us anglers say that. You know, we say that, you know, anybody win $1 million if they can spend $3 million. You know, so, and there's a lot of truth, because it's a lot of the sacrifice and the time and the money and the effort. And, you know, I mean, another thing I used to always say, had I put the effort into school and college that I have into professional bass fishing, I would be the world's leading brain surgeon.
The world's leading. You have good ways of putting things in words, Terry.
Well, you got to be honest.
But Well, and it is, but to chase a career like that does take a lot of commitment. It
That's
takes
right.
time, it takes dedication. But it's not always the high notes that it looks like. You know,
No,
there's
no.
a lot of hours on the road traveling.
That's right.
And,
You have to be away from family and friends, and you know, and that's one thing I think a lot of people don't take that into consideration. And you know, a lot of people, their families are able to travel with them. Some aren't as fortunate. So you know, it's not an easy thing to do. You know, you have to make a lot of sacrifices. But yeah, I guess that's with anything you do in life. But there is definitely in this trying to chase a bass around the country too.
if you had to label the single moment in bass fishing that's most memorable for you, what would it be?
Man, that's a tough one. I think, you know, I don't think I could label just one. I could label 3 or 4. You know, I think always, one of them I remember like catching I caught an 8.8 in '06 in the final day of the Ever Start here, the year that I finally won that tournament. That was a memorable moment to me because that not only was it the money, winning the money, but it was the fact of, hey, you know, I'd had so many great finishes here, but I'd never won that bigger event. You know, that was probably big. But you know, I think one moment that I don't talk much about was when the FLW Tour came here. I believe it was, I can't remember, I'd have to go back and look, in 10 or 11. And I led all 3 days, and I lost the final day on a dead bass penalty that cost me $70,000. Now, that moment, you know, you think back about that dead fish cost me winning, you know, another major FLW Tour event. But I think that moment taught me a lot more, because most people would have just, you know, thrown their hands up, and, you know, and I moped around for a few days, but that taught me a lot more. And I think the thing it taught me was when I finally won in '19 at Rayburn. You know, the man who beat me, Steve Kennedy, in that event, when, you know, he was, you know, when he saw me, the next time he saw me, he was quickly one of the first people. He wanted to congratulate me because, you know, he knew he had also lost an event later on after he beat me on a dead fish. He had lost an event on the dead bass penalty. So I think that loss taught me a lot about, you got to be able to take the good with the bad, and sometimes the bad's pretty bad, you know. And you know, that was kind of my crowning moment. I was going to win that FLW event, and it felt like it got swiped away. And that loss was really something that taught me a lot about, you know, that you got to be able to. It's not how many times you get knocked down; it's how many times you can get up. And sometimes you get hit pretty hard.
Because from the outside, some people may say, well, where did you finish in that event?
Oh, I ended up second.
Second.
Yeah.
And for some, they would be excited and thrilled to be in second, but at that moment there, when you have that drive and that thinking, man, this is my moment, that can be a little rough.
You know, and I think too, another thing, you know, I'd won so many events here, and you know, everybody, you know, I'd made such a great name for myself here. Everybody expected me to win, and I didn't on the penalty. You know, when I finally won, and I won at Sam Rayburn, not here, you know, because if I win here, everybody goes, oh, well, he was supposed to win. He lives there. But when I finally won at Rayburn, it was that much sweeter because it wasn't Kentucky Lake. And I think a lot of my career I got pigeonholed, and I was kind of like a Volkswagen. I was pretty good around the house, but I wasn't real good on the road, you know. So I think that was the special part about Rayburn, was it wasn't Kentucky Lake, and it was one of the most iconic lakes in the United States.
Definitely.
And I almost think now there was a reason the good Lord didn't let me win that one here, because it was a lot more special to win it there. You know, now looking back at it, that I'm older, than, you know, to win the one here, because everybody would say, well, yeah, you were supposed to win, you know.
So for a young angler chasing the dream of bass fishing and wanting to go out and pursue that career, some advice you would tell them?
A young angler wanting to pursue that career, I would tell them 2 things. Number 1, get an education or learn a trade, because you want to have something in your back pocket. And the two things that teaches you, it teaches you a lot about setting goals and accomplishing them. Matter of fact, if you don't want to go to college, don't go to college, but have something that you can do to fall back on, because you don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket. That would be the first thing I would tell them. I mean, my parents, I didn't really want to go to college. My mother told me, said, look, you're going to go to school, and that's the end of it, and I don't care what you do after that. I'll back you 100%. You'll never hear me say a word, but you're going to get a degree, because we want you, my mom and dad didn't have one. They wanted me to have one. So now looking back on it, it was, my mom was right. It was a great thing for me, and it opened up a lot of doors for me. But get an education or learn a trade, have something, or start your own business. Something that gives you the time, that gives you an income, but also something that you can also have the time to pursue fishing. The other thing is that I always used to hear this, and never made sense to me, but the older I get, Roland Martin, those guys say, go fishing every chance you can. And there's a lot of truth in that, because I don't care where you go fishing. If you go out here on the lake, if you go on a farm pond, you go in a creek, the more you go, the more you learn about catching a fish. And buy a good rain suit, stay late, don't be a fair-weathered fisherman. That's another thing, always stay out there.
Yeah, because in that career, there's no saying, well, it's not sunny and nice out.
No,
I mean,
no.
When there's 4-foot waves out there and the storms are coming, your path continues on of trying to catch those fish.
Now, you may take cover, but there's
Right.
no quit. So that's the biggest thing, I think. Have something else, a business, start something to where you have an income, or you have another means, a fallback plan, because it just makes life a lot easier if you do that.
Sure, because like any sports career, whether you're a football player, tennis player, anything, age catches up to you too.
That's
what
right.
are you going to be able to do, or what are you going to be able to give
That's
back,
right.
or to society, so
That's
to speak? If you play football till you're 30 years old,
Yeah.
what are you going to do for the next 40?
What skill sets do you have? If that's and a lot of that's, I think that's true. You got to have some other skill sets to make yourself. And I think it also helps in your marketability to sponsors. To be able to speak and talk and do things. And I think that's where education does come in handy. But you don't have to have education from a school type standpoint. You can start your own business. You can start your own. You can start your own mowing business. You can.
Sure.
There's lots and lots. I mean, there's different consulting companies. People start consulting companies for all sorts of various things.
Well, and a lot of folks may not know this, but you actually have a career that you actually work and deal with safety
That's
and
right.
different things for companies, and they allow you the time to go out
That's right.
and still pursue
I am
the
a safety
fishing side.
consultant. That's right. And a lot of people know me. I'll walk in a company, business place, and they know me through fishing, and they look at me and they go, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, well, I actually have an education. I actually went to school. I wasn't always out here, casting and fishing. I mean, I did it a lot, but
It sounds more fun too.
it does,
being out
it
there
does,
fishing.
And I used to joke at one of my friends of mine, when I very first got involved in it, one of the plants, I come through the gate, he said, "What are you doing in here? You can't catch any fish in here." And I said, "Well, I said, all you guys work up here at these plants," and I was fishing 4 or 5 days a week, and I said, "I'd see you guys fishing every day." I said, "So I'm just going to try it your way now."
turning it around.
That's right. That's right.
So, looking at your career fishing wise and all the years of that you've been doing it, how, as an angler, what how do you want to how do you perceive being remembered on the fishing side?
I don't know. I've always tried to be a very honest person and tried to be a very consistent angler. I've always tried to stay consistent and try to, I never was an angler that won just a ton of events. There are anglers that do that. It never has been me, but I think I always want to be known as a good fisherman who stayed consistent. And and I always tell people this: if I don't make the championship at the end of the year, to me it's a failure, because I feel like if I don't fish well enough to make the year-end classics or championships, then, you know, it was all for naught. You know, and that's what I've always strived at, is to make championships and you know, give yourself that opportunity to win those big events, you know, because if you're not there, you can't win. And so that's one thing. I think just as a good, consistent angler, you know, I don't really know how I really want to be perceived. You know, I mean, I've always been a kid who was kind of a son of a machinist and a lady that worked for the telephone company, and I've really got to do for 27 years what I wanted to do, everything I wanted to do. So I really don't, you know, I've been very fortunate in that aspect. It hadn't always been easy, but I've got to do exactly what I wanted to do. And now that I'm getting older, you know, I know my day's coming to an end from fishing professionally. It's right around the corner, and I know that. And, you know, I feel like, you know, I look back on what I've accomplished, and, you know, hey, I've accomplished just about everything that I want to do. Now, the competitive side of me tells me, I'm still competitive, you need to keep going, but sometimes my body says, you know, you need to put that spinnerbait down and pick up a worm or a jig, because we're hurting over here. So, you know, that's kind of the
whole body gets wear and tear out there on that water.
That's right.
Well, Terry, the last few days has been a privilege to be on the water with you and to, you know, get to share a little bit of time on the water with you as a person.
Right.
You know, I've always seen you as that tournament angler, or that guy, you know, on that stage walking across at the FLW or whatever. But, you know, to stand here as a person and just chat with you and get to know you, you know, that's what getting real is all about right here. Because you said it a minute ago, you know, you're just a son of a machinist, and you're somebody that has a passion for fishing, and you've put your effort and you know, into that to make an entire career. My friend, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. I've enjoyed it.
Know you, and
you've got me out to go fishing, and it's been great. We've had a good time. We caught several different kinds of fish, and I've enjoyed it. And I'm glad you got me out, because this house right here has kind of taken me away from a lot of fishing this year. I mean, that boat over there has got the fewest hours I've ever had on a Ranger boat in my life this year.
Hey,
so
stop that next year.
I know it'll be back up there again next year.
So, well, folks, this is Getting Real with Terry Bolton, and once again, Terry, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.